I'm Robert Cavuto, and today on Sonic Perspectives, I'm pleased to speak with singer, songwriter, and guitarist Billy Morrison for his all-new album, The Morrison Project, which features an all-star band of all of his friends, family, and loved ones that's due out on April 19th. Congratulations. Awesome album.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. It's nice to see you, and thank you for having me on. And yeah, it's a family affair, this record for sure.
Yes, definitely. It's funny. The last time we chatted was in 2015 for God-Shaped Hole.
Wow.
And it was an audio interview, and the U.S. Coast Guard delivered you to the interview because your scuba diving boat got stranded 20 miles offshore in Clearwater, Florida.
Oh my God, you remember all that stuff?
Yes, I have it in the review. So yeah.
You know what? Had you not said that, I wouldn't have remembered it. But yeah, I remember that now. Wow.
Hopefully today's interview you got here a little easier, right?
Yeah, there's no scuba diving. I'm actually in my, this is my kitchen, and I'm drinking coffee and talking to you.
Great. I'm glad you had a safe trip to today's interview.
Yeah, straight down the stairs. It was easy.
It was easy. Like I said, I love the album, and I love the title, The Morrison Project, because it perfectly describes so many of the all-star artists that you have on this, from Corey Taylor, Billy Idol, Steve Vai, Steve Stevens, Ozzy, D.M.C. It's just a great lineup of people to have. How did you connect with so many people? Are you just all friends with everybody?
I mean, so there's a bunch of stuff in that question. First of all, the Morrison Project, I stole that from the Alan Parsons Project, because if you think about it, Alan had different people working with him,
True.
and the Alan Parsons Project seemed to make sense for that kind of thing. And I didn't title this until the end because I didn't really know I was making an album. That's the truth of it. I was making music in COVID, like most creatives, and they were not complete songs. I mean, I must have had 30 or 35 riffs, bridges, here's a chorus, like bits and pieces. And it wasn't until Sharon Osbourne, so generous of her, she said, what do you want to do with this song that you've got with Ozzy? It was crack cocaine. And I said, well, what can I do with it? And she said, well, we think this is a really good song and we're behind it. Me and Ozzy are behind it. We'll help you do the video. You know, Ozzy will do press. And it's very generous of them. And at that point, I didn't just want to waste one song. It would get confused. It's Ozzy singing it. What's Billy Morrison got to do with this song? You know,
Right.
and it was at that point that I realized, okay, revisit all that music, pick the best few, write a few more. And even at that point, I wasn't planning on getting my friends to sing on it. That happened once I had music, and I had sung on 6 of them. And I realized that to serve the song rather than my ego, it would be better to ask some of my close friends, and they are all close friends. There's no one on this record that it took a while to reach out to or whatever. These are people I can just call, and all of them without exception were generous enough to say yes. And that's how it ended up being 6 songs that I sing and 6 songs that my friends sing. But the reason it's the Billy Morrison Project is because all the music and the overarching theme and the sonic palette and all of the songwriting, it's me. So that the Morrison Project seemed like a good title for an all-encompassing body of work.
I agree. I think it nails it. And Ozzy and Steve Stevens from Billy Idol band are on Crack Cocaine, as you mentioned, which is a kick-ass blues rocker, And I'm fascinated how you, across all the singers, how you perfectly married all the singers to the type of song that they would be singing. Billy Idol song, Mr. Dream, perfect for him. Ozzy, Crack Cocaine, perfect for him, and so on. So tell me how you went about picking the people to sing the songs.
Well, I think that is, again, that's about serve the song, not your ego. The Ozzy song was a no-brainer. That came from me and Steve. I mean, obviously, me and Steve have been playing guitar together for 15 years, so we have developed kind of telepathic. We like making music together, and so we were sitting around with detuned guitars, the Ozzy detuned guitars, and between us, we came up with what we felt was a really classic, the Ozzy riff that never got written. And obviously, Ozzy's my best friend, so I'm able to call him up and go, dude, I've got a riff, me and Steve Stevens. And that whole thing just happened organically. Ozzy loved it. He came over to Steve's house, and it was just the three of us. It was one of those moment in time things that was obviously meant to happen, and it did. But I think in general, one of the skills I've picked up over the years is understanding, listening to what people do. This is not ego driven, even though we put our faces on album covers and I do this and I talk to you and it's all about, oh, Billy Morrison solo album. It really, the truth comes from it being not ego driven. If I was sitting listening to Chasing Shadows. Okay, this is a song on the album. It's the piano ballad.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it all. I wrote the melody, I wrote the lyrics, the music, and there is a version of me singing it, right?
Right.
Well, I think to best serve the song, I have to listen to it and go, you're awful on this song, Morrison. This is not a song for you to sing. And then have the balls to think, well, Linda Perry would love this. It's very Bowie, blah, blah, blah. And send that version of me singing it to Linda. I did the same with the Billy Idol song. You know, the world will never hear those versions because I'm not the singer for those songs. I think the trick and the skill is to serve the song and approach the person that feels like should be singing that song.
No, and you did that great, and
Thank you.
To your earlier point, you're not a terrible singer. You're a really good singer. And the lead vocals on songs like It's Come to This and Puppets on a String really serve the song excellently. They're hard rock, full of punk attitude. They're short, they're fast, they're snappy. Tell me a little bit about how punk has influenced you. I know you're a big punk fan.
I mean, my life changed when punk rock came along. You know, from the day I watched the Sex Pistols do the Bill Grundy show, even though I was a kid, I was like 11 or something. And even at that age, I watched the whole country have one of the greatest overreactions I've ever seen. So they swore on TV. I get it. But the extent of the anger of the adult population, coupled with the hairs on the back of my neck standing up from Steve Jones's guitar playing, from the sheer power of what they did, and that 11-year-old kid went, this is what you have to do to be seen, to be heard. Because up until that point, I didn't feel seen or heard. I felt like a little kid who didn't have a voice, and I watched the Sex Pistols single-handedly turn a country upside down, and that was it. Now, obviously, I've grown and matured since then, but that is at the basis of my lyrics, and I love writing songs for me to sing. Because I you're very kind. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest singer in the world, but I can carry an angry tune.
Yeah.
Now, a therapist is going to have a great time picking apart what I just said.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why. I don't really care why, but I can carry an angry tune, and that stems from believing the words that I'm singing.
Yeah, that is true. And that was I guess a career defining moment for you when you went from a regular kid to say, I'm going to focus on music and be this type of music. And everybody's got one, whether they watch the Beatles or Kiss or whatever on TV, something influenced them, and that started out from there.
So that's how a professional does an interview, is he leaves his phone on. Sorry about that, guys. I agree with you. I would also say that I have had many different musical epiphanies, if you like. Hip hop is just punk rock.
Yeah.
Punk was always an attitude, and as long as you have something worth saying. And so when hip hop came along early, like NWA and Public Enemy and Ice-T, I was fully in because it was making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I go with my insides, not what I see on the outsides. And so I think there's been many musical epiphanies throughout that. throughout my career. And I think also as you change and grow, you learn that Anarchy in the UK is fantastic. It's awesome. It's 4 chords.
Right.
But you can also listen to melody from R&B and or from Bowie, you know, one of my biggest influences. Yeah. And I think as you mature as a musician, you learn to take the parts that make you emotional and speak to you and integrate them into one album, which is what I did.
You touched upon my next question because a song like Just Like a Movie with DMC and Persia Numan is industrial rap. At least that's my interpretation of it. And I was wondering if it pushed you out of your comfort zone because everybody knows you for Billy Idol. Everybody knows you from the Cult. So was this really your first forte into this type of industrial rap? Because it's one of the catchier songs on the album, believe it or not.
Thank you.
It's really catchy.
So it's the first public foray into that. But what people don't know about me is that when I'm painting, because I have an art career, and when I'm painting, all that's playing is Ice Cube, Dre, Eminem, Tupac. I adore hip hop. So I, for years, have messed around with hip hop beats, rapping myself. You know, I've done all of that stuff, but just for my own enjoyment. What happened with the D.M.C song is you have to listen, you have to take advantage of the fact that a very close friend of yours is a rock and roll Hall of Famer that happened to invent a genre called hip hop. So I know I know Daryl. I had the song and I was, you know, like I said, these are my friends. So I have no worry about sending the king of hip hop, the king of hip hop, a song and going, if you don't like it, tell me. You know, I'm good. He's a friend. But he didn't do that. He sent me back a message that said, dude, this is dope. I'm gonna flow on this song. And he did it. And then Persia Numan, who I'd seen perform with her dad, Gary, she did this crazy ethereal Eastern vibe with her dad. And she made me laugh because once she'd done it, I said to her, did you know, when I asked you to do this track, did you know who DMC was? And she's like, she's 17 or something. Oh, no. Okay. You know, she said, no. I said, do you know he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? No. And I love that innocence. And she just did the chorus how she heard it.
Yeah.
And again, generous enough to just say yes, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great song. It's one of my favorite songs, which is surprising.
Thank you.
I'm usually
we're making a video for that actually. So that will be out as a focus track with a video at some point.
My forte is like hard rock, heavy metal. So that was a little bit out of what I like, but it turned out to be one of my favorites. It's one playing in my head all the day since I've been listening to it. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Steve Vai, he rips on Incite the Watch. Were you in the studio when he was doing that, or did you send it to him?
Unfortunately not. That's another example of serve the track. I am a huge fan of an English band called the Wild Hearts.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, phenomenal band. Anything that Ginger Wildheart does is great by me. And so Incite the Watch was almost 2 songs. The second section with Vi soloing, I wrote that with Ginger Wildheart in mind. It's lots of power chords and 3 key changes and rhythmic changes.
Yeah.
And I had that portion separately to the Corey Taylor verses and choruses. And when I say serve the song, I listened to that 3 key change, extra long bit. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to give that justice if I solo over that. But Steve Vai would be amazing. And luckily enough, Steve is a wonderful man. And I sent it to him. And I was not in the studio. He just sent it back. And what you hear, there's no edits. What you hear is exactly what the guy played, which is perfect.
Yes, it was. You know, I'm a Steve Vai fan, and I've seen him in concert. I love his playing. He's phenomenal. But that solo took me back to with David Lee Roth.
Oh, dude, my favorite time.
Yeah, it just ripped with raw heavy metal emotion. And I was like, wow, this is Vai doing what he does best.
Steve knows that I'm a huge fan of the Eat 'em and Smile and Skyscraper era.
Yeah.
And that was when I first learned about rhythm guitar doesn't have to be a power chord. You know, he's playing rhythm guitar on those albums, and it's powerful, and there's almost no power chords anywhere, right? So I learned from him, and he knows I'm a fan of that, and I agree with you. That solo takes me back to Shy Boy and that kind of stuff, you know?
I was thinking Yankee Rose when I was like
Yankee Rose, yeah.
I was thinking, yeah, this is like so Yankee Rose when he was in that metal phase. He's more progressive and flowy and, you know, very, very intriguing artist, but that was like rock and roll. That was like Steve Vai ripping heavy metal, and it was perfect. And it was,
which he's good at.
Yeah. You know, and I have to wonder, you have all these friends that you're working with, and you're working on songs, and you're trying to figure out who's right for the song. It's got to be a puzzle, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like a big jigsaw puzzle. And trying to put all of those pieces together has got to be challenging and time consuming.
Well, time consuming for sure. This album took a long time. The great thing was that I was under no pressure. There wasn't a label at the time. And again, right up until I decided I'm going to get some of this mixed, there was no album. I was just putting a collection of songs together. I didn't know why. I think the puzzle aspect of it, you know, I can see why it would look like it was a huge puzzle, but it wasn't really. I knew who I wanted for each song. Each song was taken as its own entity. There wasn't a big spreadsheet on the wall with, like, you know,
that's what I was envisioning.
No, it was not like that. I took one song at a time, and, you know, for instance, the song that Al Jourgensen sang on, that was originally, I've written a bunch of songs for Ministry albums. There's just no credit on there. That's a long story, but it's cool. But I've written a bunch of Ministry stuff, and that was a 16-bar Ministry riff that never got used for the last album. And I called in, because I've written songs for Al, I called in the favor. I said, Al, I've got this riff. I'm going to make it a full song. I want you to sing it. And he did. There wasn't ever, well, he's my first choice, but if he says no, I'll approach him. And it didn't work like that. So really the puzzle part of it has been more about turning a selection of songs into a cohesive album, who to mix the album, who to give it that shine, who to put it out. Putting out an album like this is not easy, because I'm not selling you the album. Hell no. You ain't signing me. Like, first of all, I'm not going on tour. So your record label model is right out the window. This needs to be someone that understands what I want. This is my project, and this is primarily about the music, you know, not marketing strategies and models. And luckily I found that in the label that I signed to, TLG. So that was the puzzle. You
know, it's an interesting linear approach where you don't bite off too much more than you could chew. You're just doing one thing at a time. So you don't need that flow chart. And he owes me a solo. And I sent this 2 months ago, and Corey's he's on tour, and I can't get Corey till 6 months from now. So yeah, it seems to.
But that's why it was time consuming. Like you said, it wasn't so much a puzzle, but it was time consuming because I wasn't focused on the end result. I just had a track, and I would send it to Al. Took 2 months to sing on that track because he was busy, and I just kind of didn't do very much. You know, I just sat around, and then Al sent it back, and now I've got 5 songs. I'm like, oh, okay, this is starting to take shape. Maybe I'll revisit this riff, and maybe I'll get Billy Idol to sing on something. You know what I mean? It was one song at a time.
What did Billy Idol think of the song that you wrote for him?
He loved it, man. I mean, the idea of Mr. Dream came from Steve Stevens. He was referencing, oh, I got to be careful. He was referencing a certain politician that is in our sphere right now. And an older lady, a grandmother, said to him, you know, I don't really know anything about so-and-so's policies, but I would vote for him because he's very charming. And that brought out this idea of this sleazy, scuzzy, rising from the bowels of hell character that is, love me for my vanity, you know, call me Mr. Dream, very charming and bringing you into his world like a devil type character. Whoa, I mean, Billy Idol, one look at that concept, he's like, I love it. I want to sit, I want to be Mr. Dream. So I wrote the lyrics and he sang it, and that's how that came about.
Did you ever present that to him for one of his albums or one of his EPs that he put out a couple of?
No, this was so that he was the last guest to go on the album. And the reason is I was sitting here looking at 11 songs with all my friends. It had turned into Billy Morrison and friends, close friends, all of them. Yeah. And it was glaringly obvious that Idol was not on the album. And it seemed weird. He's my boss. He's the guy I've been with for 15 years. So I said, look, I can do one more song. Would you possibly consider being on the album? Well, Billy is a wonderful man. He said, of course. So that song got written not quickly. Me and Steve, I put something together. I sent it to Steve. He turned a couple of chords around and suggested this. And we put that together specifically for Billy right at the end of the process. So no, it was always going to be a Billy Morrison song.
His voice sounds great too.
Doesn't it?
I thought it sounds fantastic. The production.
Well, the trick with Billy, he's got such a timbre and such an iconic voice that you need space. So we carved out that space in the verses. There's not huge guitars going on, and his voice just rises to the surface.
Well, it's a great song because you're allowed to hear the phrasing. You know, you're not rushing through it. It breathes. And that's what I love about a great song. And that's some of my favorite stuff have those, you know, those breaks where it's the guitar parts are going in between the vocals. So
I mean, there's a time and a place for a song that you can rush through. Something like Puppets on a String or Dystopia that I sing.
Yeah.
There's a sense of urgency and immediacy. So the vocal needs to be slamming all the way through, push, 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 push. Billy has this super cool, I don't need to rush this shit. You know what I mean? I'm just going to chill and I'm going to deliver this song in the way that he's got that vibe.
And, you know, speaking of that, to the counterpoint, it comes to this, just ends, right? You just,
yeah.
It's done.
Yeah. I actually love that song. It was it's part fantasy. It comes from, you know, we'd all come out of a long period that we didn't know how anything was gonna change. Right. Information overload from both sides of the political spectrum. We're getting information one day and then it's all changed the next day. There's riots, the pandemic, financial collapse in so many areas. And there was this feeling, for me anyway, of information overload. And I just want to leave.
Yeah.
I want to leave. I want to sell all these trappings around me. And I want to get in my car and I want to drive to the desert and find some kind of deeper meaning and solution and purpose. Now, clearly that's a fantasy because I'm still sitting in my house surrounded by things talking to you about this record, but it was a feeling that I think a lot of people can relate to. And we have made a video for that song. I cannot wait for people to see this thing. It's like a mini 3.5-minute movie.
Really?
It's like Vanishing Point meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the whole concept of that song is it's come to this. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. And, you know, I want to be respectful to your time, and I can't ignore the elephant in the room of all the beautiful artwork you have in the background. It's stunning. And I watch, you know, I see it on Facebook. I also see it on X, and I just love how it all comes together. And
Thank you.
I was wondering, do you don't really ever do a gallery in the East Coast, right? I've never seen you do an
I have not yet done a gallery show on the East Coast, and it's something I would love to do. But Robert, doing a gallery show, it's quite detailed. The works have to be shipped out. I have to be flown out. It's a commitment from a gallery. And I would say this, if there is an art gallery that specializes in contemporary modern that wants a Billy Morrison art show, that's something I'm willing to talk about, because I've done a bunch of gallery shows here, very successful, most of them sold out. But moving that's one of the challenges of the art business is I can literally hire people and a U-Haul van and drive my shit to a gallery.
Right.
You can't do that on the East Coast. It needs the gallery to step in and go, we want to do a show. But I would love to do the East Coast.
Some of the pictures, the paintings are quite big too. So it's not
Yeah.
like, you know.
Oh no, I paint 4 foot, 5 foot, 3
Yeah.
foot. You know, they're big pieces, and it's an undertaking. But I'm pretty sure sooner or later we'll do one.
Great. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for your time. It was a really insightful and fascinating interview. And I put my name in the contest to be.
Good.
I'm not lucky like that, but
Hey,
maybe
Robert,
I'll see you in person.
Someone's got to win it. I didn't even know we were doing it. It's such a great thing that the label.
Oh my God, yeah.
So great. I wish you luck, and maybe we'll be having dinner at the Rainbow.
That'd be great. I talked to the publicist. I said, could you sneak me in? Could you sneak me in the back door? She's like, I can. She goes into the contest. So I entered the contest.
You might win, mate. You might win.
I might, and I might see you then. But thank you so much for your time, Billy. It was a real honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.